Hello and welcome to this special webinar introducing the UCLA Dean of Students presented by the Office of Parent and Family Programs. My name is Bob Murphy and I am the co-chair of the UCLA Parents Council and the parent of two UCLA students, a freshman and a senior. My wife Deidre and I are very proud to be part of the Bruin family, and we are always amazed by the wealth of resources available at UCLA to both students and their family members. Today, I am joined by the UCLA Dean of Students, Maria Blandizzi, who will share more about her office and the work of her and her team. This is a Q&A session, so you can start posting your questions for Maria right away. The office staff will select questions for Maria to answer. Welcome to the webinar, Maria.
Thank you, Bob. I am so excited to be with you and our parents and families out in cyberspace. This is an exciting opportunity and development for us. First, let me just, before I introduce myself, Bob, I'm so appreciative of the leadership that you play in engaging our families, and we are so lucky to have you and Deidre in leading us and engaging with our families. So hopefully our families out there in the cyberspace can also join us in direct and indirect ways on campus and from afar. Now let me tell you a little bit about me and then kind of how I found my way to the Dean of Students role and how I can support you and your students. I am the Dean of Students, and while that preposition of is, the appropriate title, I really see myself as the Dean for students. I am really here for students to advocate for them, figure out how best UCLA can structure its support services, get involved on the ground in lots of different ways to make sure that what we aim to do at UCLA is to bring those developmental opportunities to bear for students in really productive, healthy, developmental ways. And so as the Dean for Students, my role is really to think constantly about having our sense of what's happening in our students' lives. So let me be specific about the areas that report to me, so that helps ground folks that want to ask specific questions, that I can be more tailored in some ways. So fraternity and sorority relations reports to me as the Dean. Our Office of Student Conduct reports to me. Our Title IX coordination and response to Title IX issues comes through the office. Case management services, those are the services that we provide students when there's a challenge, a medical or a mental health challenge. The parent and family programs comes in through me as well as to alumni affairs. The LGBT Resource Center is a center that I have operational responsibility for. The Economic Crisis Response Team, and I can talk specifically about that when students are in financial distress, the Financial Wellness Program, and Student Legal Services. So that's just the breadth, if you will, of areas that I spend more of my time thinking about. And then now I think it's always helpful to kind of get a little bit of a feel about who I am. I live on campus with my family in the residence halls. Some folks think, oh my goodness, do you ever get away? And probably for 5 days out of the week, I don't leave campus. I'm here. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old little boys, and they also go to school on campus, and my partner also works at UCLA. So I live and breathe this community, and I am grateful for the abilities every day that I get up in the morning to be able to live in a beautiful part of the country and work with brilliant, amazing students and contribute in really positive, helpful ways when I'm needed. Maybe the last thing I'll stop before we kind of go into Q&A is that I would say the focus that I have for the coming year, I'm settling, I didn't get to share this, but I'm settling into the Dean of Students role. I was hired in November of this past year, November 2015. So I'm about 4 months into the job, but I have been on campus for the past 5 years, and I've been born and raised in the University of California system, and I've worked at 5 of other UC campuses. So I really believe in the public mission and the public good that we offer as the University of California, and the Los Angeles campus is honestly, after being on most of the campuses, the best campus that provides the best, most robust, broadest breadth of experience that we can offer our students. So I'll stop there, and then I'm hoping that we can answer questions, and I'm going to call Bob into answering some of these questions with me because he's got the experience of a current parent with current students engaged in the environment. So if that makes sense, shall I pass it back to you, Bob, and you let me know what the next question is? Our first
Okay.
question is.
Yes, all right. Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. We do have a question that's come in from Linda, and she asks, what is financial wellness?
Hmm. Linda, it's nice to meet you virtually. We are working, we're 2 years into a program that we're developing around helping students with the skill building related to managing their finances. So maybe that's the best way I could describe financial wellness. We're making sure that students know and have the skills and awareness and education around managing their finances. In some situations, 30% of our students are first-generation college students. They're on a financial aid package that gets them an allocation to pay for their housing and their books and their expenses. And that's the first time a student, that's 17, 18 years old is getting $4,000 to help manage their living expenses for a matter of 3 months. If you reflect back when you were 17 or 18, did you have the skill sets needed to kind of know how to manage your finances? So the program has a Facebook page. I would instruct you, if you have more questions about what's the activity that's happening within the financial wellness program, to look at that Facebook page. There are about 15 students that are peers that are trained to help other students, because we find that the peer education model is a really effective way at students talking to students about managing money. So if your student's interested or you have an interest in that, encourage your student to get involved as a financial wellness peer. And then the last thing I'll just say, the program is piloting some online educational efforts because, getting a student to show up to a workshop in the middle of a day or at the end of a day during a busy quarter schedule might not always be possible. So we are trying to do a lot of kind of online education around this area. So all incoming students this past year took a 2-hour, what we called financial literacy webinar. And it was part of their requirement as they were coming into enrolling into campus. So we're trying to pilot some more online educational tools, and you've got feedback, or if your students got feedback about their experiences through the online educational modules, I would welcome that.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I think you answered her second follow-up question while you were talking, so that was excellent. She was asking how it's delivered to the students, and you mentioned that. So now we have another question here from Alex, and she asks, what should my student do if they see something on campus that might be a violation of the code of conduct?
Ooh, that's a great question. Because clearly I can't be everywhere. Couple different recommendations. Let me start with that. When a student is in a situation that they're uncomfortable and they don't feel the confidence to be able to say, hey, what you're doing makes me uncomfortable, and they don't have that comfortability or confidence to be able to do that, then I would encourage the student to, leave the situation that they're noticing, and depending on the egregiousness of the activity, to either go directly to UCPD or to call the police department, or to come to the Dean of Students office if it's between the 8 and 5 hours, and somebody will meet with them to talk about what they're seeing, take their report. We are located in Murphy Hall, 1104 Murphy Hall. If this is in the residence halls and there's a concern about what something's doing or what's happening in a room, my first point of contact, I would refer the student to the resident assistant on the floor. There's also a robust set of emergency duty staff every night in the residence halls. So not only if the RA on the floor is not available, there are 2 to 3 resident assistants in the building on call. There's also a resident director on call each night. That's a professional staff member. That's what the job my husband does, that's why we live in the residence halls. So depending on where the activity is coming from and at what time, I think an after hours thing, the best is to go to UCPD or the residence halls, and during daytime hours, probably coming to the Dean of Students office in 1104 Murphy Hall would be the immediate. Now, if there's a need to kind of consult, I see my student or I see this oftentimes, what do I do? We will consult also after the fact. So maybe the next time that situation happens, or there's a sense of seeing some activity that's of concern, I might do some coaching, or one of my staff might do some coaching to help a student figure out what's comfortable for them and how they would address and communicate about holding their peers accountable. And one of those ways, and I'll stop with this is my last kind of point, and maybe I'll ask Bob for you to chime in if you've got thoughts about this, but we have what's called the true Bruin values, and it's my expectation, even if it's not a violation of the student code of conduct, that Bruins raise the bar. And when I say raise the bar, that's an acronym for we expect a level of respect, accountability, integrity, service, and excellence in all of our students. And so I have conversations with students all the time about when you became a Bruin, you signed on to the values that we have as a community. And it's important that if you're not feeling like you're living out those values, or you don't see your peers living out those values, then we need to have conversations about why there's a difference in opinion about things. Clearly, I don't mean to suggest that we're not being focused on and holding people accountable on the safety issues, so that's a different level. So I don't have a values conversation when we're dealing with safety issues, but when we're dealing with things that aren't egregious in nature, then we really talk about the principles of our community and what we want our students to live out, while they're here at UCLA and beyond. Bob, do you have experiences, coaching your students through kind of some difficult situations that you might want to share, or maybe not?
Well, I wouldn't say that we've really had to coach them through any difficult situations like you're referring to, but I'm extremely happy to hear that that the true Bruin values really mean something, and that you are holding the students accountable to them, because I think that's very, very important. And it looks like we may have a few more questions here. And we have a question here from Donna, and she asks, how do students find out about summer internships? This is the name of the game for graduate having a real work experience. How does UCLA support this?
Okay, that's a great question. And also might be a good idea for a future webinar series topic, where we could really talk just with our multitude of offices on campus that help facilitate placing students in opportunities. So let me start with the basic one, and then suggest that there's a lot of other opportunities. But the Career Center is probably the first place that I would advise students to go to think about summer internship opportunities. There is an online job board, and there are also recruitment fairs, job recruitment fairs, where a lot of companies, while they might be recruiting for full-time employment, they also have summer internship opportunities that are a good step into the professional career, full-time work. And then I would say beyond the Career Center, the academic departments have touch points to for-profit companies, nonprofit companies. Our alumni association, where our parent and family program sits, has a lot of connection to opportunities out in the field where students can learn about those opportunities. So some of it is a little bit discipline specific. If they're interested in the field of law, I would want to connect folks with the Pre-Law Society and the student organization that's kind of engaged in thinking about preparing for law school. If students are interested in business, I would say I'd look to our alumni affairs colleagues or to the Career Center to help us connect. If we're thinking about internships in the field of sciences, I would look to I'm sure our Department of Engineering, School of Engineering, has a lot of opportunities and connection points. So it's a little specific to the discipline that a student is working in, but the first touch point, I think, would be the Career Center, and then from that conversation we can start to figure out how to get the student to be tapped into those right opportunities. Bob, have your kids been involved in summer? What have they done over the summertime?
Yeah, my son, he's a senior, and so this last summer he did have an internship, and he got it by basically working with one of his professors. So he was working with the professor out in the field as a geology major. So that's really a great way to connect with an opportunity is with your professors and with the departments. So that would be my tip. So it looks like maybe we have a few more questions coming up. And so we have one here from Deidre, and she asks, if my child needs help in a class, what is the best way to find a tutor or get extra help?
Okay, so Deidre, thank you for that question. I will say, again, this is discipline specific. There are resources depending on the major, depending on the class. But the first step would be to talk to the faculty member or talk to the teaching assistant about what resources exist outside of the traditional lecture time to get additional support. And then I would say talking, depending on the community that the student is a part of, there's a lot of instructional support that's offered through the library. So I would look at referring the student, depending on if this is a writing course and there's need to be support with, improving writing skills or understanding citation or support in formulating arguments. There's a writing success program. And the library is a good place to start in understanding the resources that are available around doing research and understanding one's writing and how to improve one's writing. And then on the science and the math side and the chemistry side, depending on the community, there are, or depending on the faculty member, there's a test bank that's held at the community programs office. So you could go to the test bank to see what previous examinations have looked like in certain academic classes, and that might be a good way to get a handle on what is expected in mastering the content area that you're studying. And then I think there are academic support tutorial programs in the Covell Learning Center. So if your student lives in the residence halls, Covell is on campus in the residential community, and the Learning Center at Covell can also guide students through where there are study groups already established in certain classes. And the other thing I would say is talking with one's peers about how they study. I think depending on how your student likes to learn, sometimes peer learning can be a very effective way at learning the material from yourself, because when you've got to explain to someone else or figure it out in community, you learn a lot through that, or what did the faculty member mean about that, and there's also some affirmation that can happen and some confidence building that can happen when you study with peers. So again, it's a little discipline specific, but I think there's a variety of resources, and the first place I would start as a touch point would be the library, PAL Library, and the services that are offered there.
All right, thank you. That's great. Having a student there for 4 years, I just learned a bunch of stuff. So that will help our younger one. All right, looks like we have one more question here from Linda. What do you see as your department's top priorities, challenges, and opportunities?
Oh, big question, Linda. Okay, so priorities. We are here for students. Students are my priority. And I know that sounds really broad, and I'm not trying to skirt the answer, but whatever a student shows up with is going to be priority. What their needs are, how we make sense of it, how we manage their expectations a little bit too. That doesn't mean that I'm answering and doing whatever the student asks me for, but I'm trying to understand what their needs are, framing their expectations, managing their expectations, giving them access to the resources, and making sure that their needs are being met. And I would also say some of that is managing your expectations, family members, about what we can do for a student at UCLA. We believe very much in the developmental process that our students are engaged in. And so this isn't about us doing it for them, but it's about us supporting and coaching and mentoring students through the challenges, the ups and downs of the experiences of a collegiate experience. And while I want everyone to have an amazing, positive experience, there's also something to be said about the learning that comes from working through challenging situations. And so in that way, I would say my priority is students and their development and their focus. Now, if you wanted me to get specific about what do I mean about how we support students, we're working hard at figuring out the right model within our Counseling and Psychological Center in CAPS. Maybe you're familiar with that resource. About 25% of our students at UCLA touch that resource. And it is swimming and inundated with the demand that is happening in the counseling area. And so are there other effective ways at which we can help do skill building and treatment, therapeutic treatment, that isn't through one-on-one counseling? So I would ask that we would, our executive director for the Counseling Psychological Services Center, Nicole Green, is an expert in this. But one of the priorities, and this doesn't fall in my area, but that I do see the stress and anxiety and the sense of overwhelmness that comes with our students, can inundate that service specifically. So one of our priorities within the Division of Student Affairs is to really think about different models of care that we can create so that we meet the demand. And so that kind of segues a little bit into the challenge, right? Maybe you have heard your student, I can't get into CAPS, maybe is the thing. Those really acute situations, we are getting them into CAPS. Those lower, middle tier things where students are stressed and dealing with a level of anxiety that aren't acute, we're struggling with kind of grappling and bringing in the right kind of service delivery for that second tier of needs. And then maybe if I took it out of the mental health arena, I think one of the other priorities that I have is getting our students and our student groups. One of the big things that I think is amazing about UCLA, but is also an Achilles heel for us is, we're a big campus. And so one of the ways in which we make that big campus feel small is that we encourage students to join groups and find those spaces where they have a lot of affinity and where they feel really good. And oftentimes those groups can look homogeneous in their makeup. And so what I'm constantly trying to think about is how we get groups to do intergroup dialogue. It's what we call an intergroup relations. How do we communicate across difference? Maybe we don't have a difference, maybe we do have a difference, but how do we communicate across once we found that safe space? Once that student has found that community that they feel very tied to, how do I get students to step outside that comfort zone and engage across groups? So that's one of my priorities within the Dean of Students office that I'm constantly, this year specifically, really trying to think about. Did I answer the question, Bob? Was there other parts of the question that I missed?
No, I think you answered that, and that last part to me was very important. That's one of the reasons I think it's great that my kids are at UCLA is because they are exposed to so many different cultures and different thoughts, processes, different people, and just having that exposure is going to make them better people in the long run. So that is a priority for you is excellent to hear.
Well, and it's good to hear that you're encouraging your students to do that. So I would say, parents out there, please encourage. What we do know is in the first 6 weeks of someone's collegiate experience that they will find some home bases. And those home bases will continue throughout their collegiate career. Once you found your student, find that home base, push them, challenge them, step outside that. Take advantage of the breadth and depth of community that exists at UCLA. It's a pretty cool place. It's an awesome place.
Yes, it is. It's great. All right. Okay, we have another question here from Sherry. She's asking, are the services mentioned at Covell Learning Center offered to all students, even if they don't live on the Hill?
Yes, they are. So, what I can do as a follow-up to that is maybe I'll get the Parent and Family Programs team to put some information on their Facebook page. If you're on Facebook or your students on Facebook, you could get access to Facebook in a variety of ways. There's resources that can be put around the learning centers that are on campus through Covell. The other thing is I think at the end of this webinar, we're going to talk to you a little bit about and share with you newsletters that we have. So I know there's always information about how to support the academic success of our students in the newsletters. So we'll get you more information specifically. And then I would also just share finally, before I wrap up on this one, is that the Parent and Family Programs team is always prepared to help guide you as you guide your student in figuring out those places that can support a student that's experiencing an academic stressor that they want help kind of problem solving.
Yes, they are. They make the large university feel small. We've used the services a multitude of times. As my wife likes to say, we volunteer so much for the Parent Family Office and we're on Parents Council because we've actually used the services. We feel like we need to give back.
Wonderful. Maybe you can motivate and influence and encourage the rest of our families out there to also do that with us. Yeah.
All right, so we have another question here from Amy, and she asks, how does your study abroad program work? If my child participates in the program during a regular quarter, can she transfer the credits earned from the study abroad program back to UCLA?
So my general answer will be yes, but there's a lot of nuance in regards to the program where your student studies, and there's some complexity with UCLA being on the quarter system when a student studies abroad for a short amount of time. So when a student studies abroad for the academic year, not as difficult from a timing perspective to line up the return date. You know, they'll study abroad and leave sometime in August or September, and they'll go through May, and then they'll start the academic quarter or year again at UCLA on track. But when a student studies abroad just for what oftentimes is a semester, the re-entry to UCLA, depending on the quarter system schedule, can be that there's a nuance there and there's some complexity because you know, we're on a 10-week quarter and a 1 week of finals. So sometimes students will miss, if you will, 2 quarters to study abroad for 1 semester. So I would advise that the student go and speak to the study abroad office. They're on the A level of Murphy Hall, and figure out what country they're interested in, what the requirements are for the language for the country they're going to, because the level of language proficiency will influence whether the academic credit that they have or are getting can translate back to UCLA credit. So in general, there's several different hundreds of partnerships that UCLA and the University of California have throughout the world with sister universities. And so it's important to you know, plan ahead and acknowledge that there's some complexity because of the quarter system, that there might be a little bit of a gestalt, if you will, in terms of transitioning back depending on the quarter that they're returning in.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I've also heard that you can do summer study abroads, and you can even do study abroads with another UC where you stay in the state and do what's called a study abroad. So I think there are a lot of options, but obviously checking with the on-campus office to arrange everything is the best course of action. All right, looks like we have another question here from Pat. Pat asks, if my child isn't feeling well, what services can she get from the Ash Health Center? Can they get checked for a fever, strep, etc. without needing an appointment? Can they just walk in? My child was told she had to wait 2 weeks to be seen.
Boy, okay. Well, there are walk-in appointments at Ash. I'm glad to hear that Ash is the known resource. That would be where I would want to send a sick student. Depending on the level, severity, acuity of the sickness, the Ash does pick up students from the residence halls to help them come down to the Ash Center. The 2 week, you know, I'm concerned about that point of feedback. So I would want to get a sense of how to support that student. There's also a 24-hour nurse line. So I would advise that if there's a feeling that I couldn't get an appointment at Ash in a timely way, calling the 24/7 nurse line would be an excellent next step if it's not something where you've got to go to urgent care. We can get you the information about the nurse line. It's a outside service that responds after hours, and then the next morning there is a nurse on staff at the Ash Center that makes calls back to all students that had called into the nurse line to make sure that the advice that they got in after hour over the phone was good enough to suffice for supporting the student when they're not well. The Ash it's a full, robust medical facility, and it helps students from A to Z in physical needs. The staff there's about 60 staff on the Ash team, and they cover a variety of physical needs. So.
Okay, yeah, and to follow up on that, our son has been at Ash quite a bit, from following up on a broken collarbone to strep throat, and they were able to assist him and then refer him down to UCLA Medical Center when necessary. So he's had fairly good luck with that.
Yeah. The last thing, I'm sorry, I should say, Ash did recently start Saturday hours, so they are open on Saturdays. And we can get you that information, but you'll find that on the Ash website. So that used to not be the case. So I feel really good about extending the service that Ash can provide on the weekends.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have another question here from Alex. She asks, you talked about the challenge of CAPS in serving students with mental health issues, but could you speak to some of the current trends you see on campus regarding student wellness, and what are the top tips for students regarding staying healthy on campus?
Okay, I'm going to start with the stay healthy tips. Sleep. Folks need to sleep. Everybody needs to sleep more. If you've ever heard our chancellor speak, he's a scientist and he studies biorhythm, and he can. I mean, he's a sleep expert. What he did before he became chancellor of UCLA. So hearing him speak always reminds me to go get a good night's rest. What I do find is students sacrifice sleep because they're so excited, motivated, stressed, anxious about whatever they're managing. And so my first tip would be to encourage good sleep hygiene. And if you have questions about what is good sleep hygiene, there's a whole bunch of resources online through CAPS about good sleep hygiene. So that would be my first tip. My next tip would be, I think there's so much out there about wellness and taking care of oneself and the benefits of physical movement to alleviate stress and work through anxiety. So I would say finding those outlets to physically, get the energy out, work through the emotions. There's an amazing, the Wooden Center and the recreational opportunities and the intramural opportunities, even if you're not a top, your student is not a top tier athlete, although it's awesome to know that we're amongst, amazing Olympian athletes. Not all of us are at UCLA. And so there's a wealth of resources in the recreational areas to help students, one, be part of a community and just engage in fun play. Like, go out and play. I think about my 3-year-olds and my 5-year-olds and for myself, and I've got to remember not to stress on them so much. Okay, we've got developmental milestones and we need to get there. I think there's so much that can be learned from kind of the stress relief and just getting out and playing. So what I find is we have amazing students that have worked very hard to get here, and they push themselves, and in pushing themselves, they probably compromise their physical well-being at times and their sleep. And so those would be like 2 really big things that I would encourage. The other thing I would just say is having a comfortability and an open conversation with you as a family member and the level of stress that a student might be experiencing. Let them decompress. Let them express that stress with you without you feeling like you've got to fix it or manage it for them. Be that sounding board. We know that when our students talk with their families and are open about whatever's happening in their life here at UCLA, it creates an amazing support network for the student to be able to express that to somebody that they know loves them and continues to accept them through the ups and downs of whatever the collegiate experience brings. So maybe that's my advice for family members out there, just to really not to be so overbearing. Not that you are, but if not to really just kind of accept the journey that your students are on, and to support them through that in a way that you allow them to kind of feel the ups and downs of that. And then I think I'm missing the first part of the question, Bob. Can you help me remember where Alex started out in the question?
She was asking about current trends that you see on campus regarding the student wellness.
So trends, I think, what are we seeing? We're seeing, our students, they're just coming in with expected performance anxiety. They're used to performing in the classroom, and they get into a classroom and the stakes are higher, the material goes faster, there's a challenge, they're challenged academically in one way, shape, or form, and then how do they recover when they didn't meet the expectations maybe that they have for themselves? So maybe that's one trend that I end up talking with students a lot about. Have grace for yourself. Know that you're growing and developing, and it's not all going to come easy, and you've got to push yourself. And at the same time that you push yourself, you've got to accept the fact that it's not going to come for you as easy or as it did before. So that transition, I think, can be difficult. I think also the pace of UCLA, that's definitely a trend. If students are calling home at week 4 of the quarter and saying, "Oh my God, I'm so stressed," that's a reality. The speed and pace of UCLA is incredible. So, when I talk to my colleagues nationally about what's happening on their campuses and how they're aging in their profession, oftentimes my colleagues will say 1 year at UCLA is like 7 years out there someplace else. So that's on the professional side. So I almost feel like we live in where it's almost like dog years here, right? There's so much happening. Our students could be going from 7 a.m. to 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Every day, because there's so much happening. So prioritizing what's of interest, pushing oneself to have grace and acceptance for, this is what I can manage today, not feeling a pressure to compare oneself to one of their peers, and to have a lot of confidence about what they do and how they do it. And if they're finding themselves not as confident as they want to be, talking to family members about what can I do, how can I support, how am I going to feel okay about that, where's my self-efficacy. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that as a parent, we found that we really need to be cheerleaders, because everyone at that school was the valedictorian, or everyone there is really talented and really smart. So even if you're average at UCLA, you're still brilliant, and so we have to sometimes remind our kids of that. And when they get out of this process, they're going to be a better person for stretching the limits and not going to someplace that was simpler. So I think this is great. So we have another.
My cheerleader too. I want you to be my cheerleader too, Bob. I would welcome.
Okay. All right. All right. So our next question is, how or when might your office communicate with families directly? We hear about FERPA and having third-party access, but I'd like to understand how you might communicate with parents, if at all.
Yes. Today I was on the phone with 3 parents, so it happens on a daily basis that I talk with family members. Family members, probably the best place to start when you've got questions is the Parent and Family Helpline. And if you don't have that number, we will get you that number. And I don't have it at my fingertips. I'm sorry, I should know that. But the parent helpline is really the first place to start. So there is lots, while you hear about FERPA, there's lots of other ways in which we can engage directly with families to support your student. So the parents can get third-party access to billing. Parents can get lots of access for information about the finances. You can never get access to the transcript, if you will, unless your student shares that with you. Family programs will talk with you about any and all kinds of situations and help guide you in getting a response. And ultimately, you should know that I talk to family members on a daily basis in helping support and question and respond and answer questions. And typically, any office that you might touch base with, they might not have the same familiarity or comfort that maybe I have in working with parents. So if you're feeling dissatisfied with something that had happened and how you interacted with a faculty member or a staff member in some department, that's not because they're not trying to be helpful, but really their sweet spot is working with students, not with families. And that's where the Parent and Family Programs is critical in helping navigate and maneuver through the massive size of UCLA. So I say, first and foremost, start with Parent and Family Programs, and then you'll work through that. Bob, is somebody slipping you a phone number that you can tell?
Yes, actually, my wife came by and she gave me this magnet here that has all the contact information for the Parent Family Office. So to get one of these, all you have to do is come to campus on move-in weekend, or come to campus on Bruin Day, or Parent and Family Weekend. So those are great opportunities to talk to other parents and get information about, my kid's doing this, he had a problem with that, and it's a great network to have with the other parents that have kids doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So and it looks like Linda had the number too. She just posted it as a question, and she said it's 310-794-6737. So thank you, Linda, for that.
Yes. And this is why you are the chair of the parent council and I am not, because I need to know that phone number at my fingertips.
Yeah, it's on our refrigerator, so because we use it all the time.
Awesome.
All right, here we have another question here. Could you talk a little bit more about Greek life on campus? There seems to be a lot of stigma around these groups, and I'd like to know how your office works with these groups to ensure safe and positive experiences for its participants.
Thank you. So Kevin Dougherty is the Associate Dean and Director of Fraternity Sorority Relations, and he reports to me, and we meet on a regular basis, weekly basis, to talk about what's happening in the Greek community. Maybe let me just start by saying there's about 4,500 students at UCLA that participate in Greek organizations. There's about 70 Greek chapters on our campus, and they're organized under 6 councils. And I need to be better at being able to name these 6 councils, but what I'll share is there are the traditional kind of interfraternity council and Panhellenic council, and then there are also councils for the Latino community, for the African American community, and for the multi-interest communities. I attend events when I'm invited. By next week, I'm going to a dinner at Alpha Chi Omega. They have a faculty dinner, invite faculty and professors over to the house to engage. So I try as best as possible to get events, to be invited to events and attend events within each of the chapters. There are 2 advisors, full-time staff in the Fraternity Sorority Relations Office, in addition to the Associate Dean. So ultimately 3 people are advising and supporting the chapter presidents and the community in their support of their chapters. Next week is Greek Week on campus, and that's a really great opportunity to see not only students exhibit their pride at UCLA and wear their letters, but our Associate Dean is encouraging all of our faculty and staff that have also in their when they were an undergrad or graduates to wear their letters to campus. So next week, if you came to campus, you would see. I hope I was not a part of a Greek organization, but I have several staff members that were. So we're encouraging everybody to kind of show their Greek pride. And then that will also help students that are interested in the community or a part of the community kind of name their faculty members or their staff that they work alongside that they might not have known. Oh, I didn't know you were in Tri Delt, or I didn't know you were in whatever organization. So we try to bring a sense of community even outside the specific chapters. I'm really excited to see Greek Week come to fruition this year because there's a lot of desire to build, and this goes back to kind of something I was talking about earlier about building intergroup relations and dialogue and community across groups. So Greek Week is that opportunity for all Greek organizations to exhibit pride in their individual organizations, but also as an entire community. So I feel really good about the new directions that we're going in Greek Week with Greek Life. Kevin Dougherty is about 1.5 years into his tenureship and leading that part of the organization, and so we continue to develop that. There's also there's a lot of risk management that comes with that, and the support that students need in making sense of how they host events, and they look to their Greek the chapter advisors. And their alumni advisors and the staff in the Fraternity Sorority Relations Office to advise and support. And then if we wanted to talk a little bit about stereotypes that exist in the community, I know those exist, and those exist for many of our communities, not just Greek, and we're constantly trying to educate and enlighten people about the positives that come out of being a member of the Greek community. I think one of the things, and I don't have the stat at my fingertips, but there's an active sense about GPA and checking to make sure that members of the Greek community are really upholding the academic standards of their organizations, and we've got a lot of pride around the retention and academic success of students in the Greek community. So I think those dispel rumors oftentimes when we can talk about, our Greek students are academically succeeding just like the rest of the brilliant students on campus. They are the brilliant students on campus.
All right, well, thank you for that. I saw a really nice story on Facebook about one of the fraternities across the street from the Children's Hospital that put the girl Lexi's name and lights on the roof. That was really nice to see.
Yes. And they led the way for other athletic teams to come in and support her. So they weren't just doing it. I mean, they modeled really what leadership and service and good, being a good human being was all about, right? I mean, it was about caring for people. So
yeah, that was really, really nice to see. We have another question here. It says, you talked about the many groups and organizations and ways for students to get involved on campus, but how would you suggest parents guide students to these opportunities if they are feeling homesick / overwhelmed academically or otherwise?
So my first point or my first response would be I would hope that your student lives in the residence halls, and I would hope that the residence hall community and the resident assistant on the floor helps guide students through that, navigating where do I spend my time, what do I do. If that is not the case and they didn't find a home or a community or resources in the residential context, come to the Dean of Students office. We'll get them connected to academic honor societies. We'll get them connected to other community spaces. So one area that I haven't talked about yet and that's in the portfolio is the LGBT Resource Center. You know, if your student is feeling like I can't find community and I feel like I'm a member or I am a member of the queer community, we'll make direct connections to the LGBT Resource Center. There's another community I haven't talked about, the Bruin Resource Center, which the Parents Council is actually very involved in supporting the students directly connected to the Bruin Resource Center. So we've got some really specific programs about supporting veterans, supporting our students that are former foster youth, supporting our undocumented students, supporting our students that also have children, our students with dependence program, transfer students. So I think if, depending on kind of where there's a natural inclination for, you know, who the student is, that will help me advise and guide. And the advice and guidance doesn't just come from me. That could come from anyone in the Dean of Students office. It could come from the Greek Life office. It could come from the LGBT Resource Center. It could come from the Bruin Resource Center. It could come from the residential context. It could come if you're anxious and you go to CAP and you're in a small group session, you know, the person leading that small group session could guide and direct. It could come in connecting with student groups through our SOUL office, which is our Student Organizations and Leadership Development office, which is in Kirkhoff. It could come in connecting with student government. I mean, I could go on and on and on. So my first point would be start in the residential context, and if you don't find it there, then come into the Dean of Students office and we'll guide and mentor and coach.
All right, yeah, that sounds great. There's also, you know, the rec center, and there's all the in the IM, you know, intramural sports. There's all that they can do. You know, our kids do that, and they're also on a snowboarding team. So I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff to do also. All right, so we have another follow-up question. A follow-up question to getting involved. Are there any programs or groups or resources available for non-traditional students? Oh, I think you did mention that.
Yeah, so I can plug the Bruin Resource Center one more time, but the non-traditional student that's, you know, might not find their way in or feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, where's my place, or I'm a transfer student, start at the Bruin Resource Center. Yeah, I mean, I think the staff there are expert in understanding the needs of some very specialized populations, and they're caring, compassionate people that want students to be successful. So start at the BRC. It's right off of Bruin Plaza, so you know where the bear is on campus. You look across the way and you'll see the BRC. Go in there as a family member of a non-traditional student, and you'll get to support. And then if I can also just plug, and I did this before, but Bob, you know, the Parents Council does a lot with the Bruin Resource Center. So if you're a parent out there and you don't have a student that's non-traditional, but you have a desire to support those populations, getting involved with the Parents Council, making contact with parent and family programs, they can guide you into supporting those areas. The other area I would talk about is potentially the Community Programs Office. That area is really connected to, you know, looking at the student experience through the cultural, racial, ethnic lens. So if there's questions or wanting support from those areas, also in the Student Activity Center, right next to the Bruin Resource Center, the Community Programs Office is a good place to touch base with staff. The staff there are young and vibrant, and just usually, oftentimes, immediately out of graduation or out of their own UCLA experience. So they've got some really good life experiential offerings that the Community Programs Office and the staff there can offer students.
Okay, yeah, and to follow up on the Bruin Resource Center and the former foster youth in particular, there's a Thanksgiving dinner that is put on for the former foster youth, and it's really neat to go to that and help bring a family to these kids that don't have families. And sitting around the table with them, it's just amazing how they've got to where it got to UCLA with, through the struggles that they had without having the support system of a traditional family. So it's amazing what these kids can do, and they're very inspirational, and it gives you this really great feeling just to be part of that. So let's see. It looks like we have another question here. I'm wondering if I can get involved with Parents Council if I live far away from campus. And it's probably, maybe I should start with this.
Yes, please.
So yes, you can. We have a few meetings a year only that you need to actually come to campus, and there are times when you're probably going to be there anyway. So you might want to come to Parent Family Weekend and see your child. And even if you live on the East Coast or in South Korea, you can do this. You can be part of the Parents Council, and we have members all over the world. And you can host a coffee social in your local area to get to meet other parents that have students at UCLA and build a local community, even if you aren't close. So there are lots of opportunities to be involved and to be part of the Parents Council, even if you don't live near the campus. So did you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, no, I think there's in addition to the Parents Council, which there's about 175 of you, yeah? Is that about right? 160?
That's about right, yeah.
So there's also about 2,000 family members that do volunteer, that are offered volunteer opportunities. So if you don't want to have that direct tie to the council, but you want to be involved, on a time-by-time, opportunity-by-opportunity basis, you could get connected to the volunteer cadre, right, that comes out through the Parent and Family Programs Office. So I would say there are tiers of levels of involvement. And Bob is the exemplary highest tier service chair with Deidre, of the Parents Council. But there's a lot before you need to get to that place to demonstrate your commitment and engagement with the campus. So if you talk to the Parent and Family Programs team, they will tell you, great, you want to be involved, this is the amount of scope and how you want to be involved. They'll guide you through trying to tap into that excitement and enthusiasm.
Yes. So it looks like now I've got another question for me. So it says, what drew me to the Parents Council and volunteering, and perhaps what is my favorite part about being involved on council? Well, it was funny. I was at the summer orientation for my son, and there was a gentleman at the table that was on the council, and he was talking about the Bruin Resource Center, and he was talking about helping former foster youth, and I said, wow, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to be part of that. And so then I looked online, and I clicked the application. I was like, oh no, this is like a big application process. There's no way I'm going to get on. Filled it out and then forgot about it, and then I got an email saying, oh, you're accepted, you're on the council. And I was like, uh-oh, what did I get myself into? So anyway, long story short, I have a hard time saying no when people ask me to help. So that's how I ended up here. But it's been very rewarding, and really I think I get more out of it than I put into it. It's just being part of the campus, being part of the Bruin community. And meeting all of these amazing people and their amazing children is really my favorite part about being on the council. Just saying that I'm a Bruin, that's really, I feel like I am now. That my kids are there. When my daughter got in, I was like, yes, I got a few more years. So I'd say that's how it all happened for me. And then I dragged my wife into it. What's that?
You're wearing your Parents Council polo, so there's the benefits of joining the council, right? There is the benefit.
That's right.
That shirt is made for you, Bob.
Yep. A free polo. That's what I got out of it. So, and we get to spend a lot of time together. My wife and I do volunteering, so that's another benefit. Okay, so we have another question here for you, Maria. What is your favorite part about being Dean of Students? It seems like it could probably be very busy and stressful overseeing so many departments on campus.
It is busy and stressful, but I caffeinate up, and no, I mean, I hope you've seen my smile throughout this. And it's a genuine, like, I just have such a love and a love for our students, a love for our community. I am grateful every day for, and I shared this before, I am grateful every day for the fact that I get to wake up and work in this environment and manage, you know, sometimes stress, but I get to manage and work with a community of really amazing people. Our students are passionate, and I just am, you know, to watch them and to support them in their growth and development is just awesome. And then I work with colleagues throughout the campus that are so committed to our community. It is it's a really beautiful thing. And so I don't I start to get emotional when I think about just the opportunities that we have on a daily basis to work with our students and to move the needle in their development. And I wish I was more eloquent at this point, because I feel like I've been talking for the past hour. But really, I mean, I want you to feel, even this in this virtual environment, my heartfelt commitment to and appreciation for you, family members, that have brought your sons and daughters and students to us in a way that, and then we are the canvas by which they then express themselves, and to watch that art, its art form, come to life. So I'm just grateful. So I hope I hope you feel that. I look forward to engaging individually with folks in more personal ways. I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I have every day to be on this campus.
All right. Well, thank you, Marie. That was our last question. So if you wanted to, you know, end with a close here, and then I'll follow up, and then we'll be done for the night. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, as I just shared, I'm so appreciative of family, all the investment that you have, you know, had in your students to get to this point. We are here for students. I want our students to feel supported and challenged at the same time. There's a nice balance between challenge and support, and there's a whole bunch of theoretical frameworks about how we find that sweet spot, that learning edge that our students are engaged in, and that's unique for every one of our students. But that's what I'm constantly striving for, to find that balance. I'm so appreciative of any and all opportunities to engage with family members, to support them as they support their students. And in closing, I am grateful for the leadership, Bob, that you and Deidre have of the Parents Council, and I want to make sure that families out there know to connect to the Parent and Family Programs Office when they are navigating the UCLA bureaucracy. And I'm just so appreciative of your interest and time and engagement with our UCLA community. Go Bruins!
All right, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Dean Blandizzi, for being with us today. I'm going to go through a little more information here about websites and how you can get more information following up on this, and I believe we'll also send those links out on this Hangout. So for more information from the Dean's office, please visit the DOS website at deanofstudents.ucla.edu. Information about upcoming webinars will be made available soon via our social media outlets, so please follow up on Facebook by searching UCLA Parents, or on Twitter and Instagram with the username @UCLA_parents. Also be on the lookout for the February Bruin link in your email with articles and insight to many of the topics addressed today, including student wellness. And as always, please feel free to contact the Office of Parent and Family Programs at mybruinis@ucla.edu or 310-794-6737, as Linda reminded us of earlier. So thank you, and go Bruins!
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.